The Polish chapter of the Explorers Club was founded in 1993. The ceremonial inauguration took place at the Royal Castle in Warsaw. Poles were already members of the club before the Polish chapter was established. As co-founder of the chapter, I would like to recall some of their discoveries. Next month will mark the 100th anniversary of the British archaeologist Howard Carter's discovery of Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. In November 1922, Carter and Lord Carnarvon, the sponsor of the search, opened the first burial chamber. In February 1923, they opened the sarcophagus. 2 months later, Lord Carnarvon died. Over the next 12 years, 8 of the 58 people present at the opening of the pharaoh's tomb died. Although they died of various causes, illness, suicide, or even homicide, the media announced the curse of Tutankhamun. In the early 1980s, the news spread around the world media. Has the poll traced the curse of the pharaohs? The curse of Tutankhamun explained at Wawel? The strange case of Casimir's curse. These sensational newspaper articles were caused by the publication in Poland of the first chapters of the book, Curses, Microbes and Scientists. Its author was Zbigniew Święch, a journalist and popularizer of science. Correspondents of foreign media in Poland captured the topic. Wawel Castle and the cathedral in Krakow, the former capital of Poland. The first cathedral church was built here over 1,000 years ago. The cathedral became the coronation and burial place of the kings of Poland. The tomb of King Casimir IV Jagiellon in the Wawel Cathedral. The burial chamber is located under the floor of the chapel. Casimir Jagiellon was King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. He ruled the largest country in 15th century Europe. He died in 1492, the year Christopher Columbus made landfall in the Americas. Casimir's wife, Elizabeth of Austria, was called the Mother of the Kings of Europe. She gave birth to 13 children. The modern crowned heads are also descendants from this royal couple, the late British Queen Elizabeth II, the King of the Belgians, or the Prince of Monaco. Today, one of the largest historical pageants in Europe takes place in Landshut, Germany, to commemorate the medieval wedding of Hedwig Jagiellon, daughter of King Casimir and Elizabeth, to the son of the Duke of Bavaria. On Friday, 13 April 1973, for the first time in almost 500 years, scientists looked through a small hole into the burial chamber. The Archbishop of Krakow, Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, the future Pope John Paul II, gave permission for researchers to open the tomb of King Casimir. The researchers entered the tomb. The Cardinal also did so. The first 3 witnesses to the opening of the tomb died in 1974, a few weeks apart. They were people in their prime. They died of a heart attack or stroke. During the next 10 years, 15 of those who examined the tomb and the royal remains died. Zbigniew Święch, who also visited King Casimir's tomb, went on an expedition to the laboratories of scientists and archives in Europe and the USA. He also traveled to Egypt. The investigation, which he described in his book, Curses, Microbes and Scientists, indicates that the deadly microbes that survived in the royal tomb are probably to blame for the premature deaths of these people. Zbigniew Święch was invited to join the Explorers Club by the club's president. He became a member of the club in 1987, 6 years before the Polish chapter was established. Venezuela, 1977. A Polish expedition of speleologists is preparing to set off for the virgin Sirzariñama Plateau. It races above the Amazon jungle with vertical cliffs. The targets were mysterious, regular shaped craters. At their bottom, entrances to underground passages were spotted from a helicopter. In Venezuela, the expedition leader, Maciej Kuczyński, received a phone call. A stranger informed him that he had flown in specially from the United States. He asked for a secret meeting. He said that the lives of the expedition participants might depend on it. Maciej Kuczyński knew that on his return to Communist Poland, he could face prison for meeting the unknown American, as he guessed, a military man. The stranger, on arrival, placed two photographs on the table. Both showed almost identical cave chambers, with the bottoms strewn with boulders and a circular, smooth, pink-vaulted ceiling. One photograph of a cave was taken in the Sirisariñama crater. The photograph was taken by a man who had recently become the first person to briefly touch the plateau with his foot, lowering himself from a helicopter. Photograph 2 was taken in the state of New Mexico after an underground nuclear explosion carried out 500 meters below the desert. The caves looked almost identical. "Do you know," said the stranger, "that you may be at risk of lethal radiation? Do you have the equipment to measure it?" We do not know how the cave in Sirisariñama crater was created. The exploration of the caves at Sirisariñama by the Poles yielded the speleological discovery of the century. They discovered caves in quartzite, a matter as hard as steel and as clear as pink glass. They saw gigantic underground chambers, the walls sparkling with crystals, like treasure caves from a fairy tale, with red rivers flowing through their bottom. They discovered caves formed by underground volcanic eruptions. Maciej Kuczyński, outstanding speleologist, polar explorer, writer, became a member of the Explorers Club in 1982. He was co-founder of the Polish chapter and chapter chair for a decade. The first Pole in the Explorers Club, Henryk Arctowski, was forgotten in the club. Today it is easier to understand the dramatic circumstances under which he ceased to be a member. Here is the wooden sailing ship Belgica in the Antarctic. When it sailed from Antwerp in August 1897, there were 19 people on board: Belgians, Norwegians, a Romanian, an American, and 2 Poles. The first research expedition was organized and led by Belgian Adrien de Gerlache de Gomery. On board the Belgica, they were future members of the Explorers Club: an officer, Roald Amundsen, a medical doctor, Frederick Cook, the future president of the club. They sailed into the unknown. Man had set foot on the continent of Antarctica just 2 years earlier. Henryk Arctowski became the scientific leader. He was well prepared for this role. Arctowski is considered Russian by those unfamiliar with Polish history, as he held a Russian passport. He was born in Warsaw under the Russian partition, when Poland was not on the maps. He was educated in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and geology in Belgium, at the Sorbonne in Paris, at the Collège de France, and at École des Mines, mining school. Feeling Polish, he changed his family name Art to Arctowski to have a Polish sound. He was 22 when he got a job at the University of Liège. Gerlache de Gomery met him there. Arctowski spent 2 years preparing the scientific program for the Antarctic expedition. He studied oceanography, meteorology, and glaciology in England and Switzerland. When he set off on the expedition, he was 26 years old. Apart from Arctowski, only Romanian Emil Rakovica, a zoologist and botanist, had a scientific background. The Antarctic ice trapped the ship for 13 months. During the summer, they carved a channel in the ice for a month. Finally, they got out into open water. After 2 years and the first ever Antarctic overwintering, the expedition returned to Belgium. The result of the expedition was a comprehensive scientific report on geology, glaciology, meteorology, oceanography, atmospheric optics, and the phenomenon of the aurora borealis. Arctowski published it in renowned periodicals. He set the standards for polar research. He was the first to present projects for international Antarctic research. In 1909, he arrived in the United States, summoned as a mediator in the dispute between Frederick Cook and Robert Peary over who reached the North Pole first. He stayed in the States. He organized the Natural History Department at the New York Public Library and headed it for 10 years. The outbreak of the First World War found him in New York. As an expert for the American delegation, he took part in the Versailles Peace Conference in 1919. At the conference, the shape of an independent Poland after more than a century of partitions was decided. Arctowski compiled a comprehensive report for President Wilson, almost 2,500 pages, and more than 100 maps, drawings, and tables. In the same year, the Red Army of Soviet Russia invaded the reborn Republic of Poland. The goal was announced by Lenin: to conquer Europe and make European countries into Soviet republics. The war was a clash of civilizations. The images were similar to those we see today in the media from Ukraine. Hordes of hungry Bolsheviks, raping, robbing, murdering, destroying everything on their path, marched to the west. Poles, even children, stopped the criminal invasion in 1920. In the upper right corner of the screen, 2 Red Army soldiers taken prisoner. Poland signed a peace treaty with the Soviets in March 1921. I cite these dates for you to understand the sequence of events. 14 May 1920, Henryk Arctowski was accepted as a member of the Explorers Club. He then traveled with his wife, Jane, an American opera singer, to Poland devastated by war. He turned down an offer from Poland's Prime Minister to become Education Minister. He went to Lviv, which was then part of Poland. At the University of Lviv, he created the Institute of Geophysics and Meteorology. From the States, he brought his huge library and valuable archives. 101 years ago, on October 14, 1921, Arctowski was expelled from the club for non-payment of dues. In August 1939, Arctowski traveled with his wife from Lviv to the United States to attend the Geophysical Congress in Washington. He chaired the International Commission on Climate Change. He was there when World War II broke out. He lost everything he had, but he saved his life. Lviv professors were executed by both the Russians and the Germans in a planned extermination of educated Poles. Arctowski accepted American citizenship. At the Smithsonian Institution, he began the monumental work on determining the direct impact of change in solar radiation on weather conditions on Earth. He was a world pioneer in climate change research. He made no attempt to return to the Explorers Club, perhaps because he left Poland with only a suitcase. He died in Washington in 1958 and was buried there. According to his will, his and his wife's remains were brought back years later and buried in Warsaw. He was forgotten in the club, but for a long time he could not be well known in Poland either. Henry Arctowski's will was fulfilled by biologist Professor Stanisław Rakusa-Suszewski, another former member of the Explorers Club. He is still alive. In 1977, the Henryk Arctowski Polish Polar Station was established on King George Island in Antarctica. Professor Maria Agata Olech, outstanding lichenologist, the first woman to lead a polar expedition in Antarctica, member of the Polish chapter on an expedition with the flag of the Explorers Club at the Arctowski Polish Polar Station. My exploration experience. And research on the history of exploration allow me to conclude. Polish exploration has never served the purpose of exploiting people, but seeking truth and knowledge. Polish explorers respected local inhabitants. Achievements have served the common good. There is also a current task. Partitions, wars, occupations, and censorship made information about discoveries and achievements of compatriots in the world unknown. The truth was gagged, forgotten, or lay in inaccessible archives. The occupiers wrote our history falsely. At last, we can openly study the past. My last expedition was to the secret archives of the communist services and to witness and participants in events that affected the history of Poland and Europe. The oldest witness was almost 100 years old. I was given the privilege of going inside the monastery with my camera, where women are not allowed. The result of the investigation was a book, The Hand for the Mother. It reveals the key role of the 600 years old sanctuary of Our Lady of Częstochowa at Jasna Góra, the place where Poles united raised their heads. The collapse of communism began there. Without the spiritual capital of Poland, without Cardinal Stefan Wyszyński, called the primate of the millennium, without John Paul II, there would have been no solidarity. The Solidarity Revolution, the revolution of dignity based on Christian values, was a phenomenon in the history of the world. Solidarity opened the gates of freedom, said John Paul II. Freedom to be responsible for one's homeland, helping one another. United we stand. Thank you.